snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys, so I am here today to do a cover chat video, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Stormdancer, which is by Jay Kristoff. I read this very recently and I really loved the series. I gave the first one a 4.5 out of 5, the second and third both got 5 out of 5, so I would highly recommend this. It is an adult series which is based in a steampunk Japanese feudal Japan. It's got some very cool mystical elements, it's got some very cool creatures, it's got some really awesome characters who have a lot of growth over the series, and generally it's just a very interesting, very different and very unique series which I love a lot, and I definitely would recommend to you guys. If you've never heard of it, check it out. I will have done a review by the time you see this, so you can check that out on my channel as well. And I would highly recommend this series. If you have not heard of it, definitely go and check it out for sure because it's amazing and I love it. So let's get on to the covers. The first cover that we come across is actually the original printing cover, and this one was published in the UK by Tor in 2012, and this one has 451 pages, and it's both been published in paperback and in hardback in this edition at the same time because it was originally released in Australia a little bit before this, I believe. This cover was the reason I bought this book. I love this cover so much, and I think it is stunning to look at, it's stunning to own, and it's stunning to read, and it just really fits in with the story very well. Obviously we have the kind of detailing of the plant that comes in from the top. It's a like blossom tree or something like that. I love that. I think that really emanates Japan and it really gives a feeling of that culture. We then have the silhouetted figure down at the bottom with her sword held out in front of her, and she's kind of in a fighting stance, which again emanates the feudal Japan feeling, which I love. We've got these really misty sort of purplish mountains that recede into the background and look really cool, very fantastical. Calligraphic style of the typography works incredibly well. It looks very stylish. It looks really beautifully drawn, and the swirliness and the organic feeling to it is very reminiscent of the story and the way that things are. As a whole, this cover is stunning, and it was definitely the reason I picked up the book, so is it a good cover? 100%, I love it. We also have the symbols down the side of the cover, which are the 5 symbols of the 5 different clans which are pictured in this book, so that's got a reference to the story as well. Everything so far makes sense, everything looks really good. The colours work fantastically well together. The purple and the red are kind of tones of one another. Even the silhouette is not actually fully black, it's a darker purple, so they all mix really well together, and I think that's fantastic. The symbols are actually not this colour, they're embossed with a kind of plasticky sheen, so they show up a little bit darker than the original colour, but actually they're only embossed on, and that's a really nice effect, and I love this cover so much. It is stunning to look at, it's stunning to hold, it's very soft, it's a matte cover, which I love matte covers, and it's just beautiful. I would definitely 100% buy this. I already own it, I love it. It was the reason I picked up the book. I think it's a beautiful edition, so I would love to hear your thoughts on it as well. Moving on, we then have the re-release of this edition, which is in 2013, and this is by Tor, and this one is the paperback, and it has 352 pages. This one is very similar to the original one that I just showed you guys, but we have more of the tree blossomy design coming into the picture, which I think is interesting. I'm not sure why they wanted more, but I guess it kind of links more to the red that they've changed the title into. We also have this kind of glow that's been added around the typography. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of that. I think it's a little bit cheap looking. It's very easy to do that in Photoshop, so it looks a little bit cheap. Also, the typography of Jay Kristoff's name just doesn't fit as well and doesn't fit into the design as sleekly as it should do. Seems a little bit forced on this one, which I don't love as much. We have a face that has been plonked in for some unknown reason, and we have this face instead of the clans, which I think is a bit weird because I prefer having the clans. That makes more sense to me. Unfortunately, we're stuck with the face. I don't love this one as much. I still think it's a very beautiful cover. I still think it's got a lot of the elements of the first one, which I really liked, like the silhouette and stuff. But I don't think this one is as pretty as a whole because of the face and because of the change of colour on the typography and the change of placement of Jay Kristoff's name. It just doesn't work quite as well for me. So even though it's still a nice cover, it's not the level of beautiful that the original cover was. So I would still probably buy this if I'd never seen the original, but the original one is by far superior and my favourite in my opinion. Moving on then to the 2012 edition, which came out from Thomas Dunn Books, and this is a USA publication and it's hardback, and this one has 313 pages. I really like this one. I think it's really, really nice. It's a different interpretation. It's a much darker interpretation with the combination of the black and the red on the background in these sort of clouds. It's really, really nicely done. I love the kind of silhouettes of all the plants at the bottom. I think that works really, really well. The figure as a whole with her sword or her katana or whatever they're called really, really looks good. She's very stylized, which I actually quite like. It's kind of anime in feeling, but I like that. I think it works with the Japanese feeling and it definitely harks back to the origins of the story. The Stormdancer is actually made out of these metallic kind of cogs and chain links sort of put together, which I think works fantastically well because, as you know, when you read this book, there's a lot of steampunk machinery that is incorporated into the story in a big, big way, and that definitely references that. So even though I like the calligraphy approach on the original cover, this one I think works just as well in terms of the story and the narrative, and it really harks back to more of the story. We have the Thunder Tiger, or Arashitora, who is a major part of the story, coming in at the top. He is kind of like a cross between a bird and a tiger and a griffin all at once, and I love that. I love the little depiction of him because we don't get any reference to him on the original cover, but on this one we definitely do, which is nice. And I think that the little quotations, even though I don't love having quotations on the front of books, I think it works well. It's put in a nice place, it blends well on top of the red, it stands out. And I like the fact that they've got a little strapline saying The Lotus War Book 1 underneath. That makes it very bold and it sort of gives you a little bit more context, which is nice. The figure has a tattooed arm with all sorts of things going on. I love that. I think that is part of the story. We've got her long black hair, which is obviously a major part, and we've got her in a traditional Japanese suit going on. So I think this one, even though it's a completely different interpretation, you can still see the similarities between it, and I think it works really, really well. And I'm definitely getting the third one in the series in this edition, or the third one's version of this edition, because the first two I've got in the editions that I showed you first, but the third one didn't come out in that edition in the UK in hardback, so I'm going to get the hardback, which is the American one, just a side note. But I really, really like this cover, so would I buy this one if I hadn't already got the other one? Definitely. Even though it's a completely different interpretation, it works really, really well, and it's still really attractive to look at, and I love it. So yeah, definitely one that I still really love. Then moving on, we have the French edition, which was published in 2014. This one was published by Bragelonne, or Bragelonne, I'm not sure how you say it. It has 393 pages and it's paperback, and of course it's the French edition. I think this one again is a very, very interesting interpretation. I think all of these have their own quirks to them, and I don't love this one as much just because I think that the typography feels a bit too much like the typography on the Brandon Sanderson books, so it's a little bit jarring in my head. But I do think that this one has some nice elements that are very much similar to those of the original cover. For example, we've got the kind of blossoms that are at the bottom. I like the blossom petals sitting down there. The sort of fading in and out effect looks quite nice. And we've got more of the petals sort of floating in the sky as well next to our main figure. We have the main figure, who is very, very similar in design to the other one that I just showed you guys. She's got the tattoos down her arm again, she's got the suit and the long hair, and she's got her sword. So it looks really cool overall, and I do think it's a nice design. In this one we get more reference to the buildings of Japan and China with kind of temples behind, and I like those. I think they're very, very artistic in design. Just don't like the typography on this one so much. I feel like it's a little bit too blatant and in your face when the actual cover is quite soft, and that typography kind of takes away from the softness of the cover by being so in your face. It does, however, seem to reference the blades and the metallic sheen of a blade or a sword, so I can kind of understand why they did it. I just would have liked it to be a little bit more faded in or a little bit softer so that it didn't stand out quite as much and disjoint from the picture quite as much. But I do still like the image. I think it's very nicely done. It's definitely been considered. The colours of red and black seem to work really, really well, as they did on the last cover. The kind of combination of the bluey, greeny, white, I think that's a nice idea, but it doesn't work quite as well. I would have liked if they kept that more grey than blue. Overall, I think it's a nice cover. It still attracts the eye. It's still interesting to look at and analyse. It's just not my favourite. So I think it's a really nice cover. I just don't know if I would buy it or not. I'd probably read the blurb and be attracted by the cover, but I don't know if that would be a complete selling point, whereas the first one I bought solely based off of the cover and loved it. And the final one that I'm going to talk to you guys about is the 2013 edition, which is by Butchman, and this one is the paperback edition. and this one I don't like. It's probably my least favourite of them. Even though it still has some cool elements, I don't like it as a whole. I think that the typography is interesting. The typography on this one is kind of trying to be calligraphic as well, but it's a bit too uniform rather than custom calligraphy, which is a bit of a shame because it could have been really, really nice. I think the typography that they've used for Jay Kristoff and the size that they've made Jay Kristoff's name is actually really nice. The colour that they've used harks back to the background, so that's a nicer touch, and I think that works very, very well. The background on this one is kind of a bluish green colour with red also splattered on, and to me it feels a little bit too much like blood, which is why I don't like it as much. I feel like it looks more like fire or blood, and there is a lot of brutality in this series. It's definitely not a light-hearted series. There is brutality, but I think this one just feels too much like it's focusing on the brutality. We have the Thunder Tiger behind who is screaming, and it just looks very, very chaotic and scary, and it looks more scary than I think it is, so I don't love that. I do like the main character. I think the way that they've depicted the character looking straight out really is kind of how our main character would act. I think she's very strong looking, she looks very sure of herself, and that's definitely something that she develops over the course of the story, so that makes sense. I just don't like the combination of the background, the Thunder Tiger, and her. I think they don't all work together. Maybe if the Thunder Tiger had been taken out, or if she had been taken out and it was just one of them, it would have worked better for me, but at the moment it feels like too many elements are trying to squeeze together into one thing, and that doesn't work as well as it should do, because it hasn't all been thought about and considered in the way that I would have liked it to be, so that all the colours match, or so that all of it kind of is a bit more seamless than it is. There are definitely cool elements, like the gleam on the sword is really, really nice touch, and I like that, but I just don't think that it's really simplistic enough to attract me. I think there is always a balance with me. I like it to be very, very stylish and elegant and exciting, but it needs to have a simplistic element to it as well. It can't be too cluttered, and I feel like this one is trying a little bit too hard and therefore has become a bit too cluttered, especially when you consider that we've also got the logo and we've got a quote and we've got another little strap line at the bottom, and it's quite a lot going on one thing. So I think this one is a little bit too busy and I don't like it as much, so I probably wouldn't buy this one if I saw it. But it's still an interesting concept, and it definitely does reminisce back into the story and reference things from the story, which is a great thing that all of these covers do, so I definitely think they're all individual and they all work. I would love to hear which ones you guys would buy, which ones you wouldn't buy, which do you like, which do you not like. Leave me all of your comments and let me know if you have any ideas of other cover chat videos that you would like to see in the future, anything that I've not mentioned before in cover chat, or anything that you think I should look up. If there are any editions of this book that you have that are completely different, then let me know, especially if you're in Australia, because although it was originally published in Australia, Goodreads doesn't show me the Australian edition, so I'm assuming it's the same as the first one, but I'm not sure, so let me know if you guys know. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all very, very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little